Andrew, are you wearing sunglasses in homage of our dear friend Chris Johnston? The other show that I do.
Absolutely. I felt like you're most familiar and most comfortable when your co-hosts wear sunglasses, Julian.
Very much so. You know what? I'm not letting this happen again. You know what? If we're gonna get to this point, I'm gonna wear sunglasses too. If my co-host can be ridic, I can be ridic too. Anyway, uh, this was a dumb bit. I didn't even plan anything for this sunglass stuff. Andrew's here, Jess is here, Rick is here. We're gonna talk about the Montreal Canadiens on this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. My name is Julian McKenzie, and 2/3 of the usual suspects are here, and one is obviously filling in. Rick Green, Stanley Cup champion, is here. Jessica Rusnak of CBC Daybreak Montreal is here. And because we're not allowed to have someone with Stu's viewpoint being anti-analytics and someone with analytics on at the same time, Stu is out. He's on the road. Andrew Berkshire, occasional columnist for the Montreal Gazette and Game Over Montreal host, is on with us. Andrew, thank you very much for tapping in.
My pleasure. I'm here to bring the analytics or the best viewpoint.
Oh, I can't wait to get into that if we have time for that. Let's get into these last few games for the Montreal Canadiens. Shootout win over the Tampa Bay Lightning over the weekend, and a loss to the Ottawa Senators by a score of 6-3. Not gonna lie to you guys, as the Senators game was going on, I had a second screen on with the Florida Panthers coming all the way back against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So forgive me if my attention was split two ways, but I think Canadiens fans can appreciate the fact that I watched another Leafs collapse. But strictly keeping it to the Montreal Canadiens, Jess, I would love to know your takeaways of the Montreal Canadiens over these last two games.
Well, the game against the Tampa Bay Lightning was an important one for the Montreal Canadiens for many different reasons. Of course, they played each other in the Stanley Cup final last year. One team continued to dominate the league. The other one is sitting at the bottom and is just counting down the days until they could take out their golf clubs. But it was important for them. A lot of pride was on the line to face Tampa Bay, and also their coach, Martin St. Louis. That's where he played the majority of his career. A huge fan base there for him. It was an important game for him going there, and they wanted to get the win for him. And I think also to prove that they can play with some of the top teams in the league. It was a difficult road trip for them facing Stanley Cup contending teams. And they were able to get a win against Tampa, and that's a huge achievement. The game against the Ottawa Senators, the problem was that they got into penalty trouble, and that's really where the game started to fall apart for the Montreal Canadiens. But, at this point, they're playing entertaining hockey. Like we said, even though that loss against Ottawa, it was back and forth with goals, made it entertaining up until that third period where it was just all Ottawa. But you know what? Just keep playing entertaining hockey until the end of the season and then see what they're able to do to start next year.
I thought it was a great game in Tampa. I mean, again, the way that the Canadiens have been playing, competing and, doing their best each and every shift, each and every night. And, it was enjoyable to watch. Hats off to Allen again, 41 saves. The guy made the difference to keep them in the game with some breakdowns. And, as Jess said, it was more motivation, I think, for the group, knowing that St. Louis was probably pumped and fired up and wanted that win so badly that they responded and found a way to win. And that's a good sign, and that's a good character win for them. And then going into Ottawa, they are playing Ottawa. They turnovers, turned the puck over, and caused goals and caused scoring chances. But I have to give full marks to the Senators. I was really impressed with their speed and their execution as a group, because they played really well. Not to say that Montreal was that bad, but I was quite impressed with the Ottawa Senators overall game. And I think, the future for Ottawa is going to be bright. But, the Canadiens learn from their mistakes, and hopefully they'll eliminate some of those sloppy plays in the defensive zone that ends up costing them goals and ultimately costing the game.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. I didn't think that this Canadiens team had that Lightning game in them through the rest of the season. They've been sticking with it against teams that are better than them for a long time now under St. Louis. But post-trade deadline, it seemed like they had taken enough hits roster-wise that they couldn't really hang with those good teams. And what struck me about that Lightning game is at even strength, they outplayed the Lightning, like full stop. They earned that game. They outscored them 4-1 at 5-on-5. The special teams continue to be an issue. It's been years that they've been an issue. You know, they're not going to get better this season. I think there's other things that Martin St. Louis is much more focused on right now. It's probably something they want to work on next year and going forward on the rebuild. But I was shocked at how strong their play was. I was really impressed by the young defensemen. All three of them I thought had ups and downs in that game, but very like obvious ups. Even like Justin Barron, I think, struggled the most against the Lightning. But then in OT, he just decided to manhandle like 3 Lightning players at once. And I was like, hey, if you're going to endear yourself to your teammates, going after a bunch of Lightning players after they've been knocking Allen all game is probably not the worst idea. So he's showing his toughness and his grit. And against the Senators are a team of chaos, right? I think what Rick was pointing out, the speed and execution, they're a weird team, and they've always been this team for some reason the last decade or so. They don't necessarily outplay you, but when you try to clear the zone and the puck hits a broken stick on the ice, all of a sudden it's a Senators 4-on-1. They didn't necessarily do anything to earn it, but they execute it and they finish it. It's very weird the way that they play, but you got to give them credit for it. The Canadiens, I thought, again, at even strength, solid game, but special teams just not there yet. There's a lot of stuff to point out that's good, though. I thought the biggest thing for me in that Senators game was the play of Brendan Gallagher. He led them in basically all the underlying metrics. He was a fireball all game, scored his first 5-on-5 goal of the year, which, you know, absurd that it took so long considering he's the second biggest 5-on-5 goal scorer over the last 3 years. But good things for Brendan Gallagher. He showed fire at the end of the game. I think Tim Stützle is going to be a fan favorite to boo in the Bell Center for a long time.
Oh God, yeah, all the diving. At first, like the knee-on-knee collision, like I know a lot of people were kind of going against my view on it, but like the collision with him and Nick Suzuki, like if you ever been hit knee-on-knee before, it is painful. It hurts. It doesn't matter if it's hurtful enough where it's like you got to miss or stiff. Like you're going to feel the shock for about like a couple minutes where your knee just hurts, you know, and everyone's like, oh, well, Tim Stützle should have taken a shift off. It hurts. It might not hurt that long, but like I would give him that grace. But there were other stuff going on with Tim Stützle that night where, yeah, I think he definitely sold a little bit on some other stuff. Not to mention, I think TSN even showed a graphic and I may have it a little bit wrong, but I think the only other guy in the last little while who's been able to like get as many penalties or at least draw some is like Connor McDavid. Like Tim Stützle is able to draw penalties, whether or not they're merited or not. I mean, I guess we'll leave that up to debate. Anyone else have thoughts on Tim Stützle and the diving reputation? Because Brendan Gallagher had some very choice words about that post game.
Well, to me, it just shows you the refereeing as far as their inability to read that and, you know, hold a guy like that accountable, because as we see and read about, it happens a lot with them, and until they you know, take care of that issue by, you know, for whatever it's worth, fining him or, you know, putting his name in the list of a guy that dies and embellishes the play. I mean, you've got to try something to try and get this guy to realize that this is not part of the hockey game picture, and if he wants to do an act like that, he should go play soccer.
I was just thinking of Peter Griffin, you know, when he hurts his knee on Family Guy and he sits there for 20 minutes. But you know what? I think it was just like Brendan Gallagher said, this wasn't an isolated time, that he's played against him for a few years now, and these things keep happening. And as he said, you know, that there's people that look up to you. And you want to show that you're a good role model and show what hockey is supposed to be about. And you don't want this in the game. You don't want the dramatics of it. And I think Brendan Gallagher just had enough. But something I just wanted to mention about Gallagher is what Martin St. Louis said about him after the game, saying that he's trying to tweak his game a little bit. You know, now that Gallagher, he will be turning 30 next month. The way he plays really has an impact on his body, and kind of teaching him, you know, how to keep playing at like an impactful level, but just adjusting your game as you get older so you don't get hurt so much. And I think that's a huge benefit of having Martin St. Louis as a coach, knowing what it's like to be a smaller player, needing to play that gritty style, and how to have longevity in the league.
Absolutely. And I think Gallagher probably wouldn't have said anything about Stutzle at the end of the game there if when it was 6-3, Stutzle didn't come and give him a little cross check in the back of the neck. And then when Gallagher went after him and like, listen, Brendan Gallagher's a tough guy, but he's 5'8" listed generously on the NHL's website. I'm 5'7". I've seen him around town. I'm like taller than him. So he's not the hugest guy. And Stützle immediately turtled when Gallagher went after him. And then once the ref started holding Gallagher down, then Stützle's gloves came off and he wanted a piece. So I think that whole situation combined with laying on the ice, you could see Gallagher was just incensed and he couldn't let it go. I think this guy, good on him for being a good agitator, because there is room for that in the game in terms of like being an effective player, but he's going to get continual reputation situations like that where guys are going to go after him because it's not fun.
Yeah, I could imagine that. I'm glad we were able to address that whole Tim Stützle thing. Another guy I want to get to, I know I wanted to talk about Jordan Harris a little bit, and we'll give him this moment in a second, but we also have to shout out Justin Barron, gets himself his first NHL goal in that game against the Senators. And you had mentioned, Andrew, he looked pretty good against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So before we get to Jordan Harris, and I would like your thoughts on Jordan Harris as well. Any thoughts? I'll start with you, Andrew, with Justin Barron.
You know, ups and downs for a 20-year-old defenseman. You expect that. I think there's been times where he's looked really confident and solid with the puck. He struggles a bit more when he's under pressure in his own zone to exit the zone cleanly. But I like what I see. I think there's something there offensively. I think he's got some really good instincts. I love the play where you're strafing across the blue line and you let the little wrister go far side. It's one of my favorite underrated plays for defensemen. Like John Klingberg is the master of that. It's such a great little thing instead of the big slapper into a shin pad.
Okay, Rick, what about you?
Great mobility, which is a huge part of the game now, being able to jump up into the play. A kid that seems fairly disciplined in his defensive zone as far as his coverage goes and technique goes, and showing great promise for, so early on in his NHL career that he's able to deal with the speed and size of the opposition. So always nice to see some intelligent guys back there that understand how to play and what they need to do and not do.
Yeah, and he was a guy who came in here with pressure. Not many, I would say, I wouldn't necessarily call him a prospect because he was playing in the AHL and has some NHL games under his belt beforehand, but he was someone who was not a proven NHL player coming in, having that pressure because of that trade with Colorado. Going from Colorado to Montreal gave him the opportunity to play more NHL games. He got his first goal. So far, it looks good. Hopefully, there's not a serious injury to him after getting hurt in the game against the Ottawa Senators, because it would just be a disappointing way to end the year for him and any kind of progression that he's making. But, so far he's handled that pressure of being under the spotlight, seeing what he's able to do, because a lot of people have heard that he was is supposed to develop into a top player. And so far it looks good.
I'll say this with Justin Barron. I think it's still okay to list him as a prospect. He only has 7 games NHL experience. And I believe he is a year younger than the next guy I'm going to mention in Jordan Harris, who signing out of college, joining the team. A lot of people, I think, were a bit confused whether or not he'd be eligible for the AHL playoffs. As I understand, he's not. So he looks as if he just spend the rest of the year with the Montreal Canadiens. He gets 2 games under his belt, and I thought he looked all right against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and in particular against the Ottawa Senators as well. Rick, I should have started with you when it came time to talk about defensemen. That is my mistake. Let's try to correct that by having you start the conversation about Jordan Harris.
Well, even I'm so happy to see the youth back there in the blue line and their ability to play the game at such an early age. And you look at Jordan Harris, who's played 2 games, who has shown such great poise and composure that is so impressive. To see him step in and be confident and be given the opportunity to play, and has responded in such a good way that I really enjoy watching him. I mean, you watch him skate. He is a fluid, very, very mobile guy, and he's not afraid to jump up there into the play on the offensive side. And you saw him a number of times being very selective and saying, okay, it's my time to go. I'm jumping in there. I'm skating with the puck. I'm going to be involved. And wow, obviously a huge bonus to have that. And, a number of the younger guys coming up in the future, I think the potential for some really good impact players back there on the blue line is nothing but exciting times, and going to be a big part of this hockey club in the future.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I thought that most of all, I see a guy who's quiet and effective with the puck in all three zones. He doesn't have much panic in his game. Like Rick mentioned, he's so fluid. In Tampa in the third period, he kind of struggled when there was a lot of pressure in his zone, like in zone defending in the NHL. He was, first NHL game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's okay to struggle a little bit, right? It makes sense. But that was maybe something that he needs to work on. But overall, I've been really impressed by his poise under pressure, his ability to keep plays alive in the offensive zone. I don't see dynamic offensive play from him yet. That's maybe not something that we should expect, considering he's like expected to be like a number 4 or 5 defenseman in the NHL. But if he's going to be a 4 or 5 defenseman and he already looks this good, that's a pretty good thing to have. If the Canadiens have that much depth on defense through the prospects, like that's nothing to shake a stick at, right? Like I think that this kid is something that could be very beneficial to the NHL or to the Montreal Canadiens going forward.
Yeah, and the Habs blue line needed a reboot, and they needed these young players to come up and show what they can do. It's still early on. He's adjusting to playing at the NHL level. I also kind of love the storyline that Kent Hughes was his coach at one point, and at one point he was coaching the opposition team, and he didn't really like him all that much, and now he's his boss. And the fact that he also said that, there was no hesitation for him to sign with the Montreal Canadiens. When they did make the management change, firing Marc Bergevin, he said, yeah, there was a little bit of time of reflection there to see, is this the team I want to go to? And then when he saw, it was Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes, and then eventually they brought in Martin St. Louis. He used to play hockey with St. Louis' son as well. It was like a no-brainer to go and sign with them. And I think that's also a really positive sign if this young player is saying, this is what kind of made me decide not to test free agency, to sign with the team that drafted me, because I have faith in the people who are in charge of this team, is huge. And I think that can also help other players that maybe they want to attract, through free agency or trades, maybe waive a no trade clause kind of thing down the line. But, so far it's been good with him. It's been a small sample, but this is kind of what this next, few games or weeks of the regular season is for the Montreal Canadiens. Just give these guys as much ice time as possible and see what they're able to do.
And I always liked judging the D on their decisions with the puck. None of those hope plays where I think this is the right play. He's pretty knowledgeable and heads up. And we touched on poise. That's a good example of a guy that doesn't just give the puck away or make some passes going to areas where he thinks it's the right one. He knows in advance. He knows what's going on. He's got all the tools to be real good.
One other player we're waiting to see if he will in fact make his return to the Montreal Canadiens is Carey Price. We all know with this Montreal Canadiens team, with Carey Price, anything is possible. Just look at how last season ended. He's been skating, taking part in practices. I've actually seen him with my own 2 eyes, just taking shots or him just taking his own time on the Brossard practice facility ice. I'm curious how long until Carey Price is able to come back. And Andrew, I'll start with you with this one. How important is it that Carey Price is able to get games in before the end of this year? And let's try to have some kind of conversation about what his future could be like. It's a bit difficult for us to kind of predict what it could be, but let's start with at least this facet of his question. How important is it for him to get games before the end of the season?
I think it's extremely important, both for him and for the organization. I think Price needs to see where he is, how he feels in a real game situation. And the Canadiens need to know what Carey Price is left, right? Is he the Carey Price that we saw in the last 2 playoffs? Is he the Carey Price that we've seen in the last 3 seasons? Is he somewhere in the middle? And I know that Elliot Friedman kind of threw out a bomb on 31 Thoughts a while ago saying that if Price plays this season, he might not be in Montreal next year. He might get traded. I'm still gun shy about the possibility of that happening because his contract is so large. I'm not sure in a basically flat cap situation how legit that could possibly happen. Like who actually has the room that would want Carey Price and that Carey Price would want to go to, because he does have, I believe, a limited no trade clause of some kind, or maybe even a no movement clause. So it just doesn't seem that likely to me. But for the Canadiens rebuilding, if Price is able to have even some of the form that he's shown in the last 2 playoffs and carry that through for the remainder of his contract, it's still possible that this team can rebuild quickly enough to get another run in with Carey Price. And I feel like for him and for the organization, that's something that's very interesting. But we need to see him play to see if he can get back there. Will he show that form this season? We don't know. But even if he comes in and doesn't play super well behind a very young defense, if he can feel the mechanics of his body working properly for him, he can look forward to next season and know what he has to work on.
I think it's more important just for him. And that's something that he brought up when he did speak to the media earlier this year, that when people were saying, you know what, why not just shut it down and say, I'll be back next year. And he said, this is my job. This is what I'm known to be. And the only thing I know to do is to be the goaltender for the Montreal Canadiens. He wants to get out there and play. He's a competitor. He's passionate. He wants to show what he can do. I don't necessarily know, like, if the team needs him to play to give a good value of what Carey Price's game is like now, especially because the team has not been very good this year. They have a lot of young players that I don't know if they can necessarily get a good gauge. And just remember, Carey Price is a guy who kind of has a slow start. Remember how many preseasons that Carey Price has not looked good, and the fan base is freaked out about it and thought like he's already washed up, this year's over. And he said, chill. It's preseason, and then he comes out and has a good regular season. So I think it's just more for himself to come out and play, and it would be good if he can, but also just don't rush it, because this has been a very intriguing year for him. This knee surgery that he underwent that was not supposed to take this much time to recover, the setbacks that he's had, that if he's ready to go out there and they think it's the right thing to do, then have him go out.
And I mean, let's face it, everything's going to revolve around Carey Price's health. He's been out for so long. We don't know what we're going to get from him, but I think it's critically important that he does play. He does test all of his body parts, if you will, to make sure that they're able to hold up at 34 years old. And, from that point moving forward, I think I'll have a better idea as far as what the future holds. And if he can stay healthy, get in game conditions, the team obviously would love to have him back in the lineup. They're going to be quick to judge, oh boy, he didn't stop that one. He didn't make this play. He didn't do this right, didn't do that right. But he's a competitive guy. He wants to come back in. He wants to come back and show that he's still able to do the job. And I think everything will revolve around that once we see him get back, feel good, and be a part of the team, even though there's only a few games left, and just see how he holds up. And then we'll see for next year. He definitely, I think, will still be part of the picture, providing he is healthy and he can play.
Yeah. And I know there's lots of consternation around Montreal of how long it's taken Price to recover from this knee injury, and how it's way more than they expected him to be out for. But I would like to remind Canadiens fans of Andrei Markov, and that he missed essentially 2.5 seasons with a myriad of knee injuries and complications from surgeries that didn't pan out. So this kind of thing can happen to professional athletes. It's a different thing for an average person to recover to the point of being able to, walk around and play casual sports, than an athlete who puts so much tremendous strain on all of their joints being comfortable to play after a surgery. So I think there's a situation where Price could come back, not look that great this season. When Markov came back after his knee surgeries and played 13 games in 2011-12, he looked awful, and everyone thought he was done for. Next season he comes back and he's amazing. He's Andrei Markov again. He learned how to adjust his game. A little bit different because, a knee is maybe a little bit more important to a goaltender. But if Price has to adjust his game, he's going to need to learn that on the fly.
Not just that, that the knee is important to his game. I mean, Carey Price is not 25, 26 years old. He's on the other side of 30. Markov. That's true. On top of that, he has a no movement clause in his contract. So just adding that clarification from a little bit earlier. That being said, though, he does have the NMC. I still think he ends up a part of the team for next year. But I'm trying to envision a scenario where, if he somehow plays really well, and the team says, well, you know what, maybe there's a way we can make this work where he can play on a cup contending team. Even then, like, I just think with the wear and tear on him for the last how many years, you guys could tell me if I'm wrong. Jesse could tell me if I'm wrong, but like, I don't envision a scenario where the Canadiens would move on from Carey Price. And part of me thinks too, if he's playing at a high level, maybe the Canadiens see it as a situation where they don't see the incentive of moving away Carey Price, because they would rather have a really good goaltender playing in front of some young defensive talent and other players trying to, as the team tries to get themselves over the hump.
For sure. And like, look at this season, perfect example when they had no proven NHL goaltender and how much that hurt this team. So yeah, if Carey Price is playing well, it doesn't make sense for them to say, okay, let's go and try and trade him now and offload this contract and see what we can get back. Use him to your advantage. And he's a huge leader in the team. You heard the players around, just even having him back at practice and how important that was for them. So yeah, there's not really that big of an incentive if Carey Price is playing well to get rid of him. Keep him around, let him continue to do what he does, because he essentially took this team to the Stanley Cup final last year. Imagine if he can do that again. Anything is possible after watching last year's playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Rick, do you have a final thought here before we move on?
I really believe there's steps in the decision that is going to be made with Carey Price, and let's get through the first step of getting him back and seeing where he's at physically, and see whether or not he's really ready to go. And that will be determined sooner than later. And then, once that is in place, I think that they can seriously consider, okay, he's healthy, he can play. How do we allow our organization to live with him or live without him? Financially, and with another goalie to fill his void.
Okay, last one before we wrap up here on Martin St. Louis. He has shown a lot of confidence in some of the younger players, and we've talked already about Justin Barron and Jordan Harris, how they fit into the lineup. Alexander Romanov, he keeps getting minutes upon minutes. It wouldn't surprise me if we see one game he ends up playing 30 minutes in a game. But a lot of young players on this team. Cole Caulfield, we've talked about Cole Caulfield ad nauseum and what has happened with him under Martin St. Louis. Why do you? I have a good theory with this, but why do you think? And Jess, I'll start with you. Why do you think previous Montreal Canadiens head coaches didn't take that same approach when it came to allowing more time on ice and opportunities for younger players?
I think it's just Martin St. Louis' personal experience that he was someone who's always had to prove himself, being a smaller player. Many people did not think that he would make the NHL, let alone be put together a Hall of Fame career. So he needed a lot of coaches that were out there that would help him, that would trust in him, give him these opportunities to show what he's able to do. And if he didn't have those opportunities, well, maybe he, would be doing a completely other job now. And I think that's his lived experience. And he sees potential in a lot of these young players. And go out. Here's your opportunity. Show me what you can do. Take advantage of this. And I think maybe that's the major difference. He also coached younger players. I think it does play a factor in there, even though they are way younger than the players coaching right now, the players he's coaching right now in the NHL. But he just sort of seems to have a lot of faith in people. I will only discipline you if you do something wrong. Prove me wrong. This is your opportunity. If you don't take advantage of it, okay, well, I'm going to take it away from you. And I think that's his philosophy. And I think that's been kind of the difference between him and some of the other coaches. Maybe some of the other coaches were basing things on what they've done in the past and really holding it to them and not giving them a second opportunity to redeem themselves.
And I think the mindset of previous coaches and managers was one of, hey, listen, let's let these kids have some time to play little bits and pieces, and that's not the great way to handle things, because it does make the kids uncomfortable, and the confidence issue comes into play. You get new management that are quite content on saying, you know what, kids, go play. You make a mistake, we have no problem with it. You're going to play the next game. You mentioned Romanov before. He struggled earlier on in the year. They took him out one game, and then they said, you know what, let's put him in. He's got all of the tools that he needs to play to develop them. And I think it's been nothing but great to see him, move forward with his overall game. You look at all the other kids now, they are not afraid of making a mistake. They know that they're going to get a chance to play no matter what. and they're getting minutes to develop. And I was always a big fan of saying, you know what, let's let these kids play, throw them back out there, correct the mistake, and let them learn from it. And don't make them feel on edge and feel uncomfortable, knowing very well that they're not going to get a chance to play the next shift, or they won't even play the next game. So live with their mistakes, let them play. They got all the good skill set to progress in a really positive way. And that's how you have to allow these kids to develop.
Yeah, I think hockey's a game of mistakes, right? And for a long time, I think coaches have seen it as we need to remove as many mistakes from our game as we can to avoid dropping a game, right? And you look at the history of the NHL over the last 30 years or so, and coaching has been primarily focused on defense, right? You get everybody to buy into your system that you know what to do when the puck is on your stick, like 2 or 3 different actions that you can take. And in some instances, that's good, right? Having a very rigid system allows the worst players in your team to look better. But as St. Louis said when he first came in, it also drags the best players in your team down. And I think the bonus of being in a lost season for St. Louis is he kind of doesn't have to worry about the mistakes costing them games because there's nothing really to play for. So he can say, who are our best players? Who can make these reads? Who can gain confidence by trying to make plays that you wouldn't normally be able to in the NHL? Whether that can carry through into the next season is another question. I think so far, Martin St. Louis has talked the talk and walked the walk. So hopefully he maintains that philosophy, but he's also in an easier situation to let that stuff go. And we do have to recognize that. But you look at the way that the NHL is heading, offense is actually a priority now. And you see more coaching towards offense. I think offense has been viewed as an individual thing for a long time, right? Great players generate offense and great systems generate great defense. Now you see more systems geared towards creating more offensive style, getting in closer to the net, getting more of those slot line passes through, and scoring in the NHL, non-coincidentally, is way up. This is the highest scoring season on a per 60-minute basis since 2005-2006. And in 2005-2006, there were way more power plays because this year are the fewest power plays per game in the history of the NHL. We just don't see power plays anymore. But the power plays we do see, the average power play this year is clicking along at 21%. Remember the last time the Canadiens had a killer power play in like 2007, 2008? It was like the best power play in the league, and it was like 20%. That was like the best power play in the league. Now the average power play is better than that. So there's a lot of boost towards offense now. And I think the fact that we actually have a Canadiens coach and a Canadiens management staff that's prioritizing offense is a really interesting and fun thing for this organization and its fan base.
Yeah, you brought up essentially a point I wanted to bring up, and the fact that we have to remember the fact that because of the fact games have not mattered for the Canadiens for the last 2 months, players can go out and make mistakes, and it's not really going to do anything for them in the long run. In fact, if they make mistakes and it leads to losses, it helps their draft lottery odds even better. So yes, please, if you're the Montreal Canadiens, go out and make mistakes because it's going to eventually make their chances a lot better at getting Shane right. Rick, I think you're about to make a point.
No, I was just going to say, as you mentioned, Andrew, that the trend is offense. Everybody goes. And if you look at the teams that are having success, the defense are a huge, huge part of the offense now. And they are really, really active in almost every offensive rush. And if you look at the replays of goals scored, you're going to see not 3, 4, and sometimes 5 guys involved in the offensive stuff. And that generates some great offensive opportunities. And if you look at the way that they're, taking care of the blue line with some real offensive-minded defensemen, but also responsible defensively, these are the kind of guys and the kind of players that are going to fit the mold of the NHL, where offense is good to go, and give them the green light to be a part of it each and every night.
The big question with that, though, because we're seeing it in the regular season right now, how will that translate over to the playoffs? Because we all know the regular season and the postseason, 2 different brands of hockey being played. That's going to do it for all the questions on this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. But there is one thing we have to mention before we end, and it's a bit bittersweet because Jess, we all think the world of you. I think the world of you as someone I've known you for quite some time. A bit sad to know that you are, great that you're going to be on maternity leave, but sad to know that you're not going to be on the show up until, I guess, ahead of the 2023, 2024 season. When he said that before we started the show, I was like, wait a minute. That's not even next season. But in all seriousness, I just, you've been incredible on the show, and straight up, we're just going to miss you, seriously.
Thanks. Well, I'll miss you guys too. It's always fun. And we'll see what the hockey team's going to be like when I come back from mat leave. And it's crazy to say 2023, 2024. But hey, that's the fun thing. This team seems like it's on the up and up. So maybe we'll be talking about a Stanley Cup contending Montreal Canadiens team. Who knows?
Maybe, and maybe we'll do it in person and not on Google Meets. Any other thing you want to say to the fans? Because I know a lot of people like watching you on the show, and a lot of people just enjoy you, period.
Well, I just think it's great being a Montreal Canadiens fan and having this opportunity to talk about the Canadiens, because people are so passionate about it. No matter what you say, someone, might agree with it, might disagree with it. But it's great to have, so many people so involved in a hockey team, and you see how great the city can be when this team goes deep into the playoffs. And it was great getting to experience that last year. And hopefully it's not going to take, another, what was it, 25 years or 93 to 2021?
Jesus, man. Time is a weird construct.
Can I just say, Jess, I just want to wish you obviously all the best as a new parent, and enjoy the ride, because it's a special time. And, I just want to, wish you well with everything that comes with it.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I'm going to echo that sentiment as someone who's gone through it, not on your side, obviously, twice in the last few years. It's the best feeling in the world. And the only thing is nature's cruel joke of everyone tells you to sleep a lot before, and it's hard to sleep when you're pregnant. I know, but make sure you can get as many snoozes in as you can, and don't let anybody tell you to put that kid down, because the snuggles only last a certain amount of time. Get every snuggle you possibly can.
Perfect. We'll do it. Thanks.
Jess, you will be missed. I do not have children, so I do not have any advice on that front. But I just wish you nothing but the best in maternity leave, and we'll still link up, and of course, just wishing you nothing but the best for the next few months, and enjoy the time off, and enjoy being a mother, and enjoy everything that comes with it. We're all going to miss you, and I'm happy for you, but I'm also just bummed because I love having you on the show. So you will be missed, Jess. Thank you. And thank you, Rick, and thank you, Andrew, for tapping in for Stu. I'm sure if Stu was here, he'd have a lot of great things to say about you, Jess, of course. And thank you, everyone, for watching Hockey Inside Out on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube page if you have not done so already. Subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. Not subscribe, but visit hockeyinsideout.com for more stuff. I admittedly got distracted because Andrew just put on the sunglasses just as we were ending off here. So let me at least try to join you in solidarity, brother, as we wrap up this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. Stay tuned for the bonus episodes coming up in the next few days. Peace. And thank you, Jess.